Have you ever wondered how many heroes of World War II never received the recognition they truly deserved? How many were forgotten simply because their skin was a different color? Today you'll hear a story that you won't find in any Hollywood movie about D-Day. It's not in Saving Private Ryan or The Longest Day, even though both films show the barrage balloons floating above Omaha Beach. By nightfall on June 6th, nearly 2,000 African-American soldiers had landed on the beaches of Omaha and Utah, but their stories remain untold. The 320th Barrage Balloon Battalion was the first black unit in the segregated U.S. Army to land on D-Day. Among its 621 men was a 21-year-old medic, a man who would fight death for 30 straight hours on Omaha Beach and win more than 200 times. This is the story of Waverly Woodson Jr. June 6, 1944. 9 a.m. Waverly Woodson jumps from the landing craft into the freezing water. It's the third wave of the assault on Omaha Beach. Their LCT-856 hits a naval mine, loses power, and begins to drift helplessly. German artillery opens fire. An 88mm shell slams into the boat. Woodson feels a burning pain. Hot shrapnel tears through his body, hitting his groin, thigh, and back. The soldier next to him stops moving. Woodson thinks it's over, but something stronger than instinct forces him to act. Another soldier quickly wraps his wounds with improvised bandages. Woodson wades through the icy surf toward the shore. The beach is a slaughterhouse, bodies everywhere, the wounded crying out for help. He finds shelter behind a rocky embankment beneath the German stronghold WN-61 and sets up a makeshift aid station. 10 a.m. The 30 hours of courage begin. The first patient lies before Woodson, his foot shredded by shrapnel, bone exposed, flesh torn apart. If the medic doesn't act, the man will bleed out. There's no anesthesia, no sterile operating room. Under fire, bleeding from his own wounds, Woodson performs an amputation. It's only the first of more than 200 cases. As soon as he finishes, another wounded soldier is carried in, this one with a bullet in his abdomen. Woodson sprinkles sulfa powder on the wound and applies a pressure bandage. Bullets whistle overhead. Another soldier, hit by shrapnel in the shoulder, Woodson removes the fragments, cleans the wound, bandages it. Next, a man with a broken leg. He sets and splints it. Another with a chest wound. Woodson applies a special airtight dressing, hour after hour, man after man, each one teetering on the edge of death, each one given another chance because of Woodson. After many hours, Woodson's aid station runs like a well-oiled machine. Then he hears desperate screams from the sea. A British landing craft is trying to unload troops, but something goes terribly wrong. The boat capsizes, and heavily laden soldiers plunge into the churning water. Their gear drags them under. 3 men drown before the eyes of hundreds. Most people in Woodson's condition would have stayed put. He's wounded, exhausted, with dozens of men still waiting for treatment. But Woodson can't ignore the cries. He jumps up, runs toward the water, his body screaming in protest, and dives into the waves. He reaches the first soldier, lifeless. Woodson drags him to shore and immediately begins artificial respiration. He compresses the chest, breathes air into the lungs. Minutes stretch endlessly. Nothing. Then, a cough. The man spits out seawater. He's alive. Woodson goes back for 2 more. Night falls. Woodson has been working for more than 12 hours without a break. His own wounds throb with pain, his bandages soaked in blood, but there's no time to rest. Darkness makes everything harder. He can't use light, it would draw enemy fire. He works by touch and instinct. The wounded keep coming. Some scream in agony, others are in shock and barely responsive. Woodson treats each one with the same care and determination. He gives morphine to those in unbearable pain, checks pulses, applies dressings, removes bullets and shrapnel. His hands move almost mechanically, but every motion carries deep medical knowledge and endless compassion. Around him, other medics work too, but Woodson seems to attract the worst cases. Everyone knows, if anyone can save you, it's him. The night drags on, but the mission continues. The sun rises over Omaha Beach. Woodson has been working for 24 hours straight. His body is on the verge of collapse. The pain from his wounds is unbearable. His hands tremble from exhaustion. His eyes burn from lack of sleep. But around him there are still people who need help. A young soldier, no more than 19, lies before him with a stomach wound. Woodson knows the boy probably won't survive without real surgery, but he does everything he can. He applies a dressing, gives plasma, tries to stabilize his patient's condition. The boy looks at him with gratitude and fear. Woodson places a hand on his shoulder and tells him it's going to be all right. He doesn't know if that's true, but the boy needs hope. An hour later, an evacuation team takes the wounded soldier to a field hospital. Will he survive? Woodson will never know. That's the hardest part of his work. He never knows what happens to the men he saves. All he can do is keep saving and keep hoping. 4 p.m. the second day. Woodson has been working for almost 30 hours. At last, the situation on the beach begins to stabilize. More medical teams have reached the shore. Proper field hospitals are established. The wounded are being systematically evacuated. Woodson's aid station, which for an entire day had been the center of life-saving efforts, slowly becomes unnecessary. A commanding officer approaches him and orders him to withdraw. Woodson can barely stand. He's pale from blood loss and exhaustion. His uniform is soaked in blood, not only his own, but the blood of over 200 soldiers he treated. Finally, he allows himself a moment of weakness. He sits down in the sand. For the first time in 30 hours, there's no patient before him who needs immediate help. He looks out at the ocean, at the beach covered with the wreckage of battle. He wonders how many of the men he saved will survive the war. He wonders if he'll ever be able to forget this day. The answer is no. He never will. After returning from service, Woodson expected recognition for what he had done. His commander intended to recommend him for the Medal of Honor, the highest military distinction in the United States. Witnesses testified to his heroism. The reports were clear, but the Medal of Honor never came. Instead, he received the Bronze Star, a much lower award. Why? The answer is painful and simple: the color of his skin. During World War II, more than 1.2 million Black Americans served in the military. Not one of them received the Medal of Honor during the war, not because they weren't brave enough, not because they didn't perform heroic deeds, but because the system was against them. In 1973, tragedy struck again, one that further buried Woodson's chances of recognition. A fire at the National Personnel Records Center in St. Louis destroyed most of his military documents. The evidence of his heroism literally went up in smoke. Woodson returned to civilian life. He didn't talk much about the war. He worked, raised a family, and lived quietly. In 2005, he passed away at the age of 83. Most of the world never knew he existed, but the Woodson family never forgot. His wife, Joanne, and their children knew that their husband and father was a hero. They knew he deserved more than a Bronze Star and more than to be forgotten. In the 1990s, the U.S. Army launched a study to determine whether Black soldiers had been unfairly denied awards. In 1997, 7 African American soldiers from World War II were posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. Woodson was considered, but once again, he was passed over. His family didn't give up. Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland took up their cause. He began a years-long campaign in Congress. Witness testimonies were collected. Surviving documents were analyzed. Historians examined every detail of Woodson's mission. In 2020, 76 years after D-Day, Woodson finally received the Combat Medical Badge. In 2023, during a ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery, his widow was presented with his original wartime decorations, but the family was still fighting for the Medal of Honor. Then, in June 2024, came the long-awaited news. Senator Van Hollen announced that Waverly Woodson Jr. would posthumously receive the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest military award in the U.S. Army. On June 7, 2024, exactly 80 years after his act of heroism, soldiers of the First Army laid the medal in the sands of Omaha Beach, at the very spot where young Woodson had set up his aid station. In September 2024, his 95-year-old widow, Joanne, received the Distinguished Service Cross during a formal ceremony. Tears ran down her face as she held the medal her husband should have received 80 years earlier. The family still hopes for the Medal of Honor. Their son Steve said, "I hope this paves the way for further recognition of his heroism. The Medal of Honor is still our goal." Woodson's story has become a symbol of the struggle for equality and justice. His legacy continues to inspire new generations. In Philadelphia, a street corner now bears his name. At Rock Island Arsenal, a medical facility has been renamed the Woodson Health Clinic. Will he ever receive the Medal of Honor? We don't know. But one thing is certain: Waverly Woodson Jr. is a hero. He was one 80 years ago on Omaha Beach, and he is one today.